My story happened about 2 years ago over a period of 8 months, and I'm so glad I no longer live in the same house. We moved to our current house because we had to, but the happenings in our house just encouraged us even more. As I'm trying to write this, I've just remembered something else that happened when I was 14 years old. My parents split up when I was 14, and my sisters were both 11 and 9. I'd always believed that negative energy could cause occurrences, and so it was no surprise to me when things went a bit strange in our house. First thing that happened was that the TV in my chest of drawers would shake from side to side, which was just not possible. I put it down to reverberations elsewhere in the house, but this was not the case. Second, after returning home one night, I came home and went straight into my room without turning the light on. However, I could see from the light coming in from the hallway. The picture I had on my wall came flying off the wall sideways and hit the door side on, and to this day, there is still a massive dent where it made contact. My younger sister also claimed to have seen the figure of a young girl standing beside her bed one morning. However, I was quick to dismiss it, as I felt as though if I acknowledged it, it would become real. Nothing else happened until 6 years later. We were in our new flat. My mom, me and 2 sisters, and everything was totally normal, up until I'd say about 1 month of being there. Can't really remember the exact order of events, except that last and final one. My sister Jane had told my mom that she had been in bed the night before, and had the feeling of someone pushing the covers down at either side of her, like almost trapping her in the bed, but she put it down to being really tired. My mom, being the world's biggest skeptic, said she was havering, and to get a grip on reality, and to not mention it to our younger sister Gemma, as it would freak her out. She did not tell me also until after a few things happened. A couple of days later, my younger sister Gemma comes to my mom with identical story, and automatically assumes they are both in on it, and are trying to wind her up, but when both are confronted, denied all knowledge, and my mom began to think along the lines that they may be telling the truth. By now, I know about the whole thing, and so as you can imagine, I'm slightly apprehensive about going to sleep at night. I was in my bed one night, and I had a room of my own, so I was last up in the house, and I think I was reading a book or something. My cat Hajma was laying on the bed, next to my thigh, and leaning on it. I was the only one who allowed him to sleep in my room, because I always felt safer with him there. I heard a noise outside my room, nothing you could really put a name to, and I started to read again, and I looked at Hamish. The next part is a little weird, but I swear it happened. Hamish was lifted 6 inches straight up in the air, still in his curled up position. I freaked. The cat meowed really loudly and ran from the room. I then went into my mom's room because I was slightly petrified. Now, my mom was sure something was happening, yet nothing had happened to her. I was now beginning to think that maybe it was negative energy, again, because this house move had been a result of the breaking up of my parents, and my mom really didn't want to live in the house, and she was miserable, and we were in turn miserable because she was. So 2 months passed with nothing happening, until my sisters and I went to Ireland with my dad on holiday, and left my mom in this house on her own for a week. I phoned my mom whilst we were away, and she seemed on edge, but wouldn't say what was wrong, so that she didn't spoil our holiday, but I had a feeling it was about the house. When we got back, she told me that one night she had went to sleep, and she always kept the bedroom door shut, and the way the doors are, you can't just push them to get in. You have to physically turn the handle, which was good, because it meant my mom could keep the cat out. She said she was just drifting off to sleep, and she felt the bottom corner of the bed being depressed, as if someone had just sat on it. She thought at first it was the cat, and had gotten to the room, but when she put the light on the door, it was still completely closed. She then put it down to her imagination, and tried to fall back asleep. Then she felt the same feeling of the covers being pushed down at either side of her, and she also felt a pressure on her chest, like someone was sitting on it. She tried to sit up but couldn't, and she also couldn't reach the bedside lamp, and the next thing she knew, something hit her really hard in the face, full force, and the chest pressure released instantly. She couldn't sleep again, and that night, she spent the night in my grand's house. We came back from holiday, and I then had to spend the last 9 months sleeping in the same room as my mom, as she was too scared. She was so convinced of something bad in the house that she went as far as to go to the library to check what was on the land previously, as these flats had been up for about 3 years. The library couldn't help, as they had no files. My mom gave up, until my sister met a lady at the bottom of our street who spoke to her unexpectedly and said that she had lived in the area all her life and knew we were new. My sister took the opportunity to ask if she knew what was there before the flats had been. She claimed that the car park to the flats had been once completely sealed with a wrought iron fence over 6 feet high that you could not see through, and the home beyond the fence was that of a scandalized counselor, and there was a lot of mystery surrounding his death. We have since found out that this was true, but there's virtually no information on the counselor or the land on which he lived. Now, needless to say, my mom is not a skeptic, and nothing has happened in her new house.
A couple of years ago, I had my first and so far only experience with the supernatural. For a little background, I live next to a canal, and at night I get light from streetlights reflected up through my window in that moving watery way. I'm also a fairly heavy sleeper and hardly ever wake up in the middle of the night. It was a Thursday night, no different from any other. I was in bed asleep as usual when, guess what? I woke up. The way my bedroom was laid out, I had a digital clock facing me, so I know it was 2:36 a.m. I'm sure you know that in this kind of situation you realize that it's the middle of the night, and take great pleasure in going back to sleep. I, however, felt odd. I cannot explain it any better than that. I simply felt odd. I was laying on my left side facing away from my door. As I laid there awake and a little confused as to what I was feeling, for no reason at all, I looked over my right shoulder in the direction of the corner of my bed and doorway, and there, standing silently, was what I can only describe as a monk. He was wearing the long robes with the cowl covering his bowed head. I was initially startled, as you'd expect, but then I felt safe. I was not afraid. I had no desire to run because it did not feel at all threatening. It was solid, not misty or transparent, and I could see the way the reflected light feels on the contours of his robe. Then it was gone. No fading, just there 1 second, gone the next. I rolled over and fell seemingly instantly back to sleep. I have always believed in the supernatural and spirit guides, and as I am not religious, the closest thing to praying I ever do is to speak to my spirit guide if I'm worried or stressed. It sounds funny, but speaking a problem out loud, even to what might just be an empty room, can be helpful in putting it into perspective. Could it be this acceptance and acknowledgement of my guide that allowed me this glimpse at this being who is working to help me in some way? I moved to Denver about 3 years ago, in the fall of 1996. Anyway, the ghost in my house started to manifest itself in the winter of 1996. I woke up in my bedroom, which is now the guest bedroom by the way, because I refused to sleep in it anymore, at about 1 a.m., and glanced over at my bedside. There was a black Persian-looking cat there, with its paws propped up against the bedside so that it was standing on its hind paws. I'll never forget the sight for as long as I live. Its body was only semi-solid, but it had completely solid yellow eyes. It was staring at me fixedly, I don't think that it was just a trick of light because of 3 reasons. 1. Those eyes. 2. It moved slightly, closing its eyes and shaking its head in a very cat-like fashion. 3. I moved my head to look at it better, and it stayed the same. I started to scream and my father came into the room after about 5 seconds of this. I looked up for a second when he came in. I looked back down, and it was gone. Me and my father conducted a very thorough search of the house, and turned up no evidence of a cat either being there or getting in. After that, odd things started to happen. Only when I was there, as if it was selective. Things that have happened. My cat's dish was mysteriously moved from the floor to the kitchen sink when no one was home. A gray scarf-like object quickly flashed in a deserted room. A white skirt-like movement accompanied by rustling, resembling a wide skirt. I heard footsteps in my parents' bedroom, slowly walking around their bed. My cat sometimes stares at a point in my bedroom late at night when no one is there, using a "look, I know" when she is watching a threat. One night when I was in bed, I felt a hand quite distinctly on my head. I saw a white figure in the corner in a deserted room, slinking gray cat shape out of the corner of my eye when I was at the computer. Things will disappear, and then when I check back in a place I've checked before, they are there. One night I heard something resembling footsteps walking slowly down the bedroom hallway, starting at the haunted bedroom, and stopping at my door for several minutes before moving on. Thankfully, it has a happy ending. A few months ago, I was sitting at the computer reading a story I had picked off the internet. It was about 10 at night and everyone else was asleep. Anyway, I felt a cold presence and was really freaked out. But this time, I felt like a prisoner in my own house whenever I was alone. Fear turned into anger. I got really mad and told the ghost to get out now and to never come back. Nothing actually happened that night, but after a moment of dead silence, my anger and courage left me and I ran upstairs to bed. I took my cat with me to bed. I fell asleep with the radio and lights on and the door shut. I had the most terrible time getting to sleep that night because I kept feeling presences. But whenever I felt anything, I would just tell it to go away. The most horrifying episode was when my cat actually stared at a corner of my bed, and I had the most horrible feeling of something crouching there waiting to pounce. For about a week, the ghost seemed to gain strength. More things happened in that week than any other time. Then he just left. The last time I saw him was at about 6 in the morning. I had gotten up early to make myself some hot cocoa, and was sitting at the kitchen table sipping a mug. To explain, my kitchen has 2 entrances, one to the bedroom hall on one side of the room, and the other is to the dining room and living room. The living room connects the 2 so you can walk from one door to the other through the kitchen without being seen from the kitchen. However, this takes a good 5 seconds. Anyway, so I'm just sitting there. I watch the door to the bedroom hall for no particular reason, and see a gray cat shape leap out really quickly and then leap out of sight. I smiled, thinking it was only my own grayish cat. But not even 1 second later, my own cat prances in through the other doorway. There was no possible way for him to get from one end to the other. I can only conclude that he was saying goodbye. Something else I think is related. When I am going up this one stairwell in my house, I feel this horrible heart-stopping sensation of fear. It feels as if someone is behind me. I don't know who. It's almost as if they want to kill me, and I have to get away. The danger feeling seems to emanate from a door at the base of the stairs leading outside into the garage. Sometimes when I run up the stairs from the fear, the feeling pursues you until about 3 feet away from the head of the stairs, where it stops immediately after a final burst. The fear is absolutely blinding, as if you are running for your life. I've asked other people in my house about that, and they've all noticed nothing. And another one, except in the hottest part of summer, when it is almost but not quite the same temperature as the rest of the house. The room I saw the cat spirit in is deathly cold. There's no explanation because it has the same amount of heating as the rest of the house. There are 3 thermostats in the house, one for the bedrooms, one for the living areas, and one for downstairs. Anyway, the living areas are always kept warmer in the house than the downstairs, then the bedrooms are the coolest. But this room is frigid. Another not entirely explained phenomena was once about October of 1998, when I was trying to dowse with a pendulum. I had it set to search for yellow, gold, or females, but once when I held it over a red object, it started to circle for no reason at all. It was completely reliable for everything else. I don't know the story of the house, but the most recent house owners were a young couple who remodeled it completely. Then there was an FBI agent, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was an elderly couple who lived in the house since it was built in the 1950s, until they both died of old age. I'm keeping a journal now on my computer of strange happenings. Anyway, the ghost is out. I will also be moving out sometime this summer. Everyone else in my family loves the house and never wants to move out, but I hate this house and can't wait to move. I still feel like the ghost is there waiting for me. I wonder about the next owners of the house and what they will go through.
My name is Vanessa, and I live in Wisconsin. There are a few things that have happened to me since I moved here 12 years ago. First off, I lived in Whitewater, Wisconsin for 10 years. There are no websites for the hauntings that go on here, but the town itself has its own history. There used to be a university for witchcraft and ESP in Whitewater called the Pratt Institute. It is now a bank. Anyway, there are tunnels underground, and many of the sororities and fraternities are connected by these tunnels. Of course, the tunnels are now boarded up, but some of my friends have allegedly found a way into them through the old water tower. In the 3 cemeteries that coincidentally form an equilateral triangle, there are what the townies call witches' circles. Their graves form a perfect circle, and it is said that if you stand in the middle of it on a solstice, you will spin in the air until you faint. Whitewater has a much more in-depth history, but unfortunately, the old city records are locked up from public use. The only reason I know a lot of these things is because my boyfriend's father was a professor at the university, and therefore had the keys to the library and such. Anyway, that's what I know about Whitewater. Now I live in the town Mukwanago. I live next to the cemetery in an apartment building. My close friend used to live next door. This place has some freaky things going on. Twice for me, and once for my boyfriend, we've woken up and not been able to move. It was as if something was holding us down. We couldn't even speak. I tried to move my arm, and my arm suddenly flew across my body, as if someone had just let it go. I told my friend about this, not the one that lived next door, and he said my friend who lived next door had the exact same thing happen to her. We had never talked to each other about it until then. I also heard children laughing while I was brushing my teeth. When I went into my room, where the laughing was, it abruptly stopped. While attempting to sleep one night, I very distinctly heard children's voices and heard one of them say, "Don't step in the water." I believe they were talking about my aquarium, which was on the floor. I also hear cupboard doors open and close. Lights go on and off, and things randomly disappear for days at a time. No, I'm not crazy. My boyfriend and close friends have heard the same things. I often wake up at night to see a dark apparition at the foot of my bed. It moves and disappears when I move. Sometimes it points at me. My boyfriend and I also often see people walk past my window very swiftly. But when we look outside, no one is there. Lots of other things have happened, but they're similar to the things I've written here. Anyway, I hope this was of some interest to you. Please respond if you have any questions or would like to investigate this matter further. Thank you for your time.
I am a 28-year-old male, when I was about 17 through 19, living with my parents in Northwest Indiana. I had a very frightening experience. I was sleeping in my bed when I was awakened by a woman calling my name, my full first name, 4 or 5 times. My family members and close family friends are the only people who call me by my first name. Nothing seemed too unusual, yet. I was laying on my front side and lifted and turned my head in the direction of the female's voice. When I cracked my eyes open, I saw the most frightening thing that I think I have ever seen. A translucent human figure standing on the other side of my bed, with arms, palms up, reaching towards me. I was frozen in terror by the sight of the figure leaning over me, about 2 feet away. As soon as the initial terror loosened its paralyzing grip a little, I immediately stuck my face back into the pillow and pinched my toes together over and over as hard as I could, saying, oh my God, over and over as fast as I could. The fear was so great, the feeling so intense, I don't think I could ever express it with words how I felt. As I regained some logical mindset, I slowly cracked open my eyes once again and slowly lifted and turned my head towards the figure. It was gone. My head fell back down with a sigh of extreme relief. I lay there with my face down and my eyes shut, wondering what just happened and why. I woke up the next morning still wondering what happened. My grandma, who was more close to me than anyone else, had died within the last year. The figure was about her height, but had reddish hair coming down almost halfway down its back. The face did not exist. It was completely transparent. The arms were transparent, but I could see the hands. They were like the hands of an adult white person. The shirt was striped. The stripes were about 1 inch wide and were vertical. They were in 3 colors, red, white, and transparent, and followed that sequence. The shirt went down about mid-bicep, to the neck, to the waist. The voice stopped as soon as I looked at the figure. Anyway, that is story number 1, and it's the most descriptive story. Story number 2 is a little less interesting. I lived in a house in the Chicago suburb with linoleum flooring in a finished basement. The basement was basically a kid's playroom. I used to hear kids playing, but not talking. I could hear them moving toys around. I know sometimes I thought they were downstairs, but then found out they were not. I thought nothing of it, until one day I heard a big wheel being dragged across the floor. I yelled at my children and told them that they are not supposed to be down there because they were grounded from the basement for poor behavior. Then I found out there was nobody there. This was frightening, but I was older and more informed about ghosts and such. Plus it happened in the middle of the day, so it wasn't as frightening as story number 1. I'm not sure this next bit is associated with ghosts, but I will tell it to you. In the same house as story number 2, I came home to find a large crow or raven in my kitchen, even though the doors and windows were locked and shut. So I went downstairs to get a towel to shoo it away, and I found a second large black bird down there. I thought it was odd. Anyway, I opened the door and shooed them both outside. I don't know how they got in. Those are my stories. I hope someone figures out this whole ghost thing someday.
This is an experience that I thought I'd like to share with you all. It relates to the battleship experiences I had. I'm a former architect for the battleship Texas, which is permanently moored at the San Jacinto Battleground State Historical Park, near Houston. The battleship served in both World Wars. She supported troop landings at Okinawa and Iwo Jima, and was the flagship for the D-Day invasion of Normandy. Since its decommissioning, there have been a number of occurrences aboard the ship that have convinced many that there is a ghost, a former sailor perhaps, who protects those who take care of the ship. The ghost appeared once in the uniform of a late 19th century sailor to warn a worker to leave the deck just moments before paint fumes rendered the worker unconscious. Had the worker not left the deck, he would have collapsed in the area of the fumes and perhaps died. On another occasion, a welder was starting some work. and kept hearing a loud and deliberate tapping just below the deck on the area where he was working. He went below at least 3 times to investigate the strange sound, which seemed to come from directly beneath his feet every time he lit his torch. On his final trip, he took a flashlight and shined it around and discovered a pool of fuel that had leaked from some large container. It is a virtual certainty that the welder's flames would have ignited the fuel and caused an explosion. The tapping sound, whatever its origin, saved the worker's life. Now, for my experience. I was at the battleship one morning meeting with 2 other staff members when we all 3 observed a uniformed sailor walk by through the ship's portholes. We didn't think much of the incident at first because reenactors occasionally visit the ship. A few moments later, it occurred to us that it was Saturday and the ship was closed. Thinking that the sailor, or whoever it was, had sneaked aboard, we began searching. We combed the ship for a great while before giving up the search. We stayed all day and never encountered the sailor. It is possible someone had sneaked aboard and then hid when we began searching and calling for him. Still, the incident was very strange, and I have not forgotten it yet. I'll let you decide for yourselves what I saw.
Did you guys miss me? I've only appeared in 6 minutes of this video, but that's because I had to go on vacation and run away, but you guys are still here to play. But seriously guys, thank you so much again for listening to this video. I have a lot of guests on today, and I'm really thankful for their support, so if you guys could go ahead and comment, like, and share, and subscribe on this video. I don't know what that means, but also just check out their channels. They create good content, and I wouldn't have asked them to help me collab while I'm away on vacation if, you know, I didn't think they were good. So go ahead. Thank you so much, guys, for, you know, participating, and thank you guys for the audience for listening. And I'm gonna stop sounding cringy because I don't know what I'm saying, and I guess I messed up again. Who cares? I'm not gonna edit that out. You know, one day I'm gonna be thrown in jail for saying nothing that actually makes sense. But until then, I'll create videos for you guys. So anyway, if you guys like this content, it's still basically me. I'm still the mastermind behind everything. You know, I got the stories together. They're supposed to be, you know, unheard, true, scary stories of ghost variety. So hopefully you guys got to experience new and unheard tales again. And if not, well, you got a refresher course, I guess. But seriously, guys, thank you so much again. I'm gonna stop sounding like a broken record and just leave you guys and kind of enjoy my vacation right now, but besides that, you guys are supposed to get a compilation. I don't know when that's going to drop. I think it's going to be on Friday while I'm still on vacation, and you guys are going to hear that. So I hope you guys enjoy that too as well, and I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of exhausted, guys, so hope you really enjoyed the video. Don't forget to comment. Let me know how you're doing in the comment section below. And remember, you can't be feisty without your underpants in a nanty bun. Yeah, I'm just gonna go, guys. Maybe go until I get the next release out, and then we'll talk about something that actually makes sense. Bye-bye.